Alright folks, how you doing? So there's a lot of kind of worrying things that are happening in the world at the moment. It seems like we're headed towards a totalitarian, socialist, communist, global state. Is this the case? Yes, it is. Will this happen? Yes and no. It will sort of happen. What I mean by that is what we're heading into now is known as the Age of Aquarius. Now, most people are very quick to dismiss astrology, and quite rightly so, because if your only exposure to astrology is the drivel that you read in the Daily Record or the Back of the Sun, today you will meet a tall, dark stranger, blah, 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 then of course you're going to make fun of it. I mean, even the type of astrology that HG makes fun of on his channel about Harry and Harry's wife, how their moon is in this and her Mercury's in that and the conjunction and all that. But if you actually understand proper astrology, I mean real legit astrology, like the type that Michael Tazarian talks about and practices, you will understand exactly what's going on in the world right now and why. Because the Age of Aquarius is representative of everything that's happening. Aquarius represents what? The coming together of groups, eccentricities, rebelliousness against conventions, rebelliousness against authority in general. But the thing about Aquarius, and I even said this to Michael when I did the Unslaved podcast with him, I can never understand why astrologers talk about Pisces and Gemini being dual signs but never Aquarius. Because Aquarius is like the most dual sign. Because Aquarius is not ruled, strictly speaking, only by Uranus, which represents individuality, rebelliousness, uniqueness, and all that sort of thing. It's also co-ruled by Saturn. And what does Saturn represent? Bureaucracy, authority, administration. Also represents agriculture as well. Things like that. Anything that's kind of like a structure, everything that's kind of like a system. So you've got basically this civil war going on for the very soul of mankind. This is what the Age of Aquarius is going to be. And this is what it represents. It represents rebelliousness, uniqueness, individuality, versus this, bureaucratic, authoritarian, very strict and conservative side. So you're going to have like one half of humanity going down one direction and the other half of humanity going down the other direction. So it's going to be like this tug of war for the soul of the human spirit, basically. And it's going to be like the two different polar extremes, battling against each other, with everyone else kind of being stuck in the middle. Because you have to understand that anyone who's Aquarius is somebody who's in conflict with himself. And that doesn't necessarily mean somebody who's got Sun in Aquarius, which is like your soul. All these different things represent, different aspects. Like your sun sign is your core personality. Your rising sign is your outward self. My rising sign is in Aquarius, for example. Your moon sign represents your emotional core. Your Venus represents how you approach love and romance. Your Mars is like aggression and sexuality and conflict, how you handle all that sort of thing. So there's different aspects, and then you've got conjunctions, and you've got all these different things, trines and etc. and so forth. And I don't pretend to have very much knowledge of astrology. I would say, you have to go more towards Michael Tazarian's work to understand that, like tarot scopes, for example. So check that out. So my knowledge of this is amateurish at best, but when I look and see everything that's going on around me, none of it's a surprise. It's basically the Age of Aquarius is the conflict between rebellion and freedom and individuality on the one side versus conservatism, bureaucracy, socialism, and for lack of a better word, tyranny on the other side, the totalitarian state. So this is what the Age of Aquarius is. It's about humanity going through this process between rebelliousness and freedom on the one hand, and conservatism and authoritarianism on the other hand, and coming out of the other side of it if we possibly can. It seems like we're in for rather alarming days ahead. But things which are associated with Aquarius have been absolutely like coming more and more and more to the fore, as we're getting closer and closer to it, if we're not already in it. things like technology. You know, look how far it's advanced in the last 15, 20 years. I mean, 30 years ago, we didn't even have the internet. You know, 20 years ago, we didn't even have cell phones, you know. So the movement towards technology is very much driven by Aquarius. LGBT and all that sort of thing, like, you know, all that movement, the trans movement, that's all Aquarius driven. That's all to do with Aquarius. You know, female rights, feminism, that's driven by Aquarius. The whole idea of equality is very Aquarian. You know, Aquarians are known typically as being those who stand up for the little guy, those who stand up for the oppressed. You know, they like to champion the cause of those who are underrepresented. You know, that's the soul of Aquarius. You know, so everything that's happening is a result of the influence of the age of Aquarius. This is what you're seeing, and you're never going to be able to stop it. There is only one thing you can do, and that is live your own life and get through it as best you can. Because this planet is both a prison and a test. You know, I know this from reading various sources, but there was one man who, to my mind, answered the meaning and purpose of life, and that was the great John Lear. He said, live your life with integrity, free of envy, fear, hate, or greed, and express your love to your family each and every day. And that's all you got to do to pass the test of life and go on and be able to move on to the fourth dimension, or whatever you want to call it, you know, and nirvana, heaven, paradise, etc., and so forth, you know. But also you're going to see like rebellion as well, more and more towards organized religions and people, you know, converging into all these kind of groups and cults, and you got to see all these different groups in conflict, you know, the conservative groups versus the liberal groups. Well, this is par for the course when you're talking about Aquarius, you know. Because Aquarians can fall down on either side. Because the thing is, Aquarians are very, very unpredictable. Like, for example, you have Ayn Rand, you know, the founder of the philosophy of, what was it, objectivism, I think, where she's talking about, she's pro-capitalist. You know, you would think somebody who's born under Aquarius would be pro-socialist, but she was dead against socialism. She said, no, capitalism is the way to go, you know, only look out for yourself. You know, so the thing is, with Aquarians, they're very unpredictable. They can fall down on either side, you know. But you know, the whole idea of converging and working together in groups, and on the one hand, kind of expressing strong individuality, and yet at the same time identifying with a group-based culture, a group-based society, and working in groups. Well, Aquarians are very self-contradictory, which is not a surprise when you realize they're co-ruled by Saturn on one hand and Uranus on the other. They're ruled by both, not just either or. So they are very contradictory individuals, and the age of Aquarius is going to be a very contradictory age. So you're going to see, you know, tug of war back and forth between the rebellion pro-freedom crowd and the authoritarian pro-bureaucracy crowd. So there is going to be that strong movement towards the one world state and the one world socialist government, and there's going to be very strong resistance against it at the same time. And that's what the age of Aquarius is all about. It's about having that conflict and coming out of it the other side more developed and more enlightened, if we don't, you know, blow ourselves up in the meantime, which is also a very strong possibility. But anyway, I hope that somewhat explains it, and thanks for watching.